Hey fellow skeptics, Lester the Skeptic Tank here. I'm sure you're all not a stranger to this happening on your desktop, or at least the number of windows you find yourself, the number of tabs. Like, what's a guy to do, or a gal to do? If, especially for those who have just one display. You know, there's always been a debate. Multiple decently sized screens versus a giant big screen. There's an up and down to both, or to each rather. Regardless, if you've got so many windows in front of you, like, what are we to do about that? This is where virtual desktops come into play. And I'm just going to provide a perspective on how each platform in the computing world, Windows, Mac, and Linux, handles that question, handles that pseudo quasi dilemma one might encounter. Some people might have to move it. Let's see. This isn't exactly a good candidate because Vivaldi is what it is. But, for example, you can move it to individual desktops. In the ways of Linux, real quickly, you can move it to different workspaces. Let's see here. Showing activities. This is what I was referring to. So, let's dig in. Put on our thinking caps a little. And let's explore what options are available to us, depending on our prospective platform of use, Windows, Mac, or Linux. Thank you, and let's dive in. macOS, my recording app, screen record on macOS, limiting me to display 1. So what I'm going to explain is the general way to navigate around virtual desktops to start. You're going to start off with a very basic listing, but as you saw me bring the cursor up, you've got my inventory of virtual desktops. Now, the one thing I've learned is if you've got more than one display, macOS treats it as though you can segregate your category of desktops among the displays. So right now with displays 1 and 2, I have desktops 1 to 11 on display 1, desktops 12 to 16 on display 2. From here, what you can generally do is drag and drop where you want this placed, because at least in my experience, I don't see a menu option of where you can move a window to a specific desktop. You can move it to a different display based on this, but what I'm looking at is I don't have a way of specifying from the menu bar a virtual desktop location. What I need to do is use Control, holding it down, pressing the up arrow. It'll give me the identification to start. Again, as you saw earlier, I'm going to bring my cursor up to the top, and it will expand to a pictorial representation of my virtual desktops. So if I wanted to, I can move it to desktop 3. And as you're seeing here, I've already opened up Mission Control. I had to use the Settings app, and then within the Settings app, I would type in Mission Control, and then I would go to I'm gonna go back to Done, so that way you can see it. So I'm gonna type in Mission. I went to Keyboard Shortcuts underneath Keyboard. I double-clicked, and then I went to Keyboard Shortcuts on the right-hand side, and I went to Mission Control on the left-hand side. Expanding the Mission Control section, I now have the option of using individual keystrokes to specify where I want to go to. So if I want to switch to a specific desktop, I had selected the use of control, holding it down, pressing a numerical key, 1 through 10, and it'll let me know which desktop I can go to. Now, you're seeing this combination here. The command on my keyboard, I have like a dual keyboard. So mine is the control/command, or control. It's still control, actually. My apologies. Control, option, and then a numerical key for anything beyond number 10. So if I wanted to, and you may not see this because again the recording is limited, if I do control option and I go to 3 or 2, I only have that. Okay? So if I were to do that, and to cycle through your desktops, you hold down control and use the left or right arrow keys to go back and forth. So you're not going to be too worried. Depending on what your workflow is, you're not going to worry too much about where you are, as long as you're like within the last two desktops, either left or right. So I'm going to click onto the individual display, a bare space on the desktop. I'm going to use arrow key left or arrow key right. That makes it easy, especially if you're quickly multitasking. If I'm going to do that, I'm going to go control 1, I can control 2, control 3, control 4, control 6, I can go back to control 1. So that's how macOS shows or works with virtual desktops. Again, interesting the way it works is you can move each individual desktop to another display. And it may throw some people off. It's thrown me off personally. Because if I'm not careful and I don't select a specific display, when I cycle, I'm going to be asking, what am I looking at? Or where was what I was looking at before? So it's going to cause you to think about what desktop you're on, or what display you're on, and within which display, what desktop you're on. So that's macOS Virtual Desktop in summary. All right, fellow skeptics, just going to demonstrate something real quick. This is the Linux portion of Virtual Desktop Management. So in KDE at the very least, which is what I've been using for a while, I'm going to type in what I want to look at. So virtual desktops. Okay. So I can have them that way if I wanted to. And then I can have different effects. And I've already divvied out some of the workspaces. So in KDE, you have a way of creating, a way of separating, like if I'm going to do video editing, I might want a workspace that's got all my video stuff, graphics stuff, gaming. I'll limit to that. Switching. And so I will do that here. I think I have that somewhere. Shortcuts. There we go. see if I could just see if it's custom shortcuts. I had managed these before. Let's see. Advanced. Oh, I can rename them workspaces. Behavior. See if it's in here. Applications. Okay, when. There it is. So I could have done that as well, but I've gotten so used to switching the number of desktops I've got. Control F4, Control F5, you see what I've got with the various keys. I'm going to try Control F8. I'll go no. I'll add a shortcut and I'll go Control F. Oh, I know why. Say no. I will try. What you saw there was me going into my terminal of some sort. Control Option 8. That looks valid. So if I wanted to because at least that's what I've got set up at this point. I think I have 8 desktops. You'll see it here. Move to desktop. Yep, up to 8. At least depending on the application, that will be available when you right click. Move to desktop. And now, this is what I've found. The activities is what you would term your workspacing. Now, I can show wherever I want. It depends. If you don't have the memory to have multiple instances of the same app, you might be well served, but just adding that to a given workspace and then adjusting the web page you're on like a browser, that's probably the most common thing you'll find. But I'm going to just point out, I'm going to apply the changes now. And I'm going to use the switching key for the workspaces. So that's what I'm being used. I'm in my YouTube space. I'm in my, depending on what I need to do, I'm in my workspace. And all the while, I can go to a desktop within each workspace. So I have many ways by which I can increase my ability to multitask. Yes, there is a need to be mentally able to juggle the many. If you got like 7 workspaces. Got to really have a good head on swivel. Be aware of where you are when you're working. So that way you can really manage your workspace, because not everyone can have a giant monitor. I have two 28 inchers. Yeah, I could think about upgrading my display size, but I think I'm good where I'm at. But in terms of the monitor, and when it comes to multiple displays, unlike Mac OS, the displays are unified because of the nature of the extending the display across the desktop. So it's not like Mac where I can delegate what display has which desktops. The displays are connected for a single desktop. But what gives you flexibility is the use of workspaces or activities. That way you can juggle. Like, say if I want to go to a YouTube related, I might rename it. So as you can tell, I'm in a different desktop now. I'm in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I go to default, I can always rename it. I just forget to. So if I go to default, what's on desktop 1 is different there, or different here than what was there. Desktop 2, desktop 3, desktop 4, desktop 5. So you have many ways of multitasking and keeping it a clean workspace. That's probably the main reason for having virtual desktops to begin with. Just got to have a good idea of what you want on a single display. And if you got two displays, that helps alleviate that concern. So you might shuffle a window on another display. But in terms of what you're working on, because depending on what you're doing in a web browser or what application you're using, you're using it for a specific purpose, a specific goal. With that in mind, you can help declutter your computing workspace. And what I'll do now is I will go to, for example, let's go to default. Nothing much going on in my default. Like you saw, I'm going to close this down. I'm going to close this. And the nice thing about KDE is I can start typing in. I'll open up an application. From here, I'm going to check my settings, display, I'm going to see what happens if I go to two displays. Let's turn that on. Because like I promised, I will have a little bit of a comparison going on between Windows, Mac, against Linux. And so, unlike Linux, Windows virtual desktops, when there are multiple displays involved, there isn't a delegation of virtual desktops per display. So I can't just distribute 1 through 4 on display 1, 5 through 8 on display 2. So let me bring that as this loads. Looks like it's about to load. So I've got this other display here. I can do, it's interesting how I can do this. VirtualBox has some virtues here. You see that this is technically my second display. And it's probably set to Let me see what happened here. I'm going to dismiss. Let me see if I can close this down. I'm going to extend these displays. And I'm going to keep the changes, because that's what I wanted to end up with. I'm going to apply. And I'm just going to make sure I can fish for, as long as I'm not within VirtualBox, that is. Because you're seeing I have my second display. And I can technically, and because the way VirtualBox is set up, I can do it that way as well. You know, I can have this something really big. The only reason I'm doing it this way is to kind of highlight. And the way to do that for in Windows, to switch your display, you know, you have Alt-Tab. You're going to use Windows key tab in order to switch your displays. See, I have a default of one desktop, and I can make a few more. Okay? And if I want to move a window, let's say if I want to move a window in, I can do Windows key tab again, and I can tell what display I want it on. Okay? I can switch between that. Now, from what a former workmate of mine told me, I think it's Control Windows key and left and right, something like that. In order to switch my desktops. I'm trying to remember which one that is. Is it this one? Oh, I didn't intend that to be there. Something Windows key and tab. It was using the up arrow, the arrow keys. Nope, Control. Oh. Let's open up a different window. That way I can not show into something similar. So, not much has changed between this and Windows 10. Seems like there wasn't much done to the virtual desktop management. So I can take a peek about... Okay, so at least with this I can say... Okay, yeah, so it's Control Windows key, left and right. That's what you could do to like cycle between. That's the only keystroke I'm aware of, other than using this and then selecting your desktop. I did some quick sleuthing on my side. No real way of telling what's available in terms of oh, don't need that. I think my work here is done in terms of the Windows side. Not much to do. Not much to really explore. Hate to say it, but that is what it is. And like I mentioned, the displays are connected. They're not. You can't delegate the desktops to individual displays. So I'm gonna go ahead, turn this off. Thank you for your time, fellow skeptics. Again, this is just a rundown of how you would work with virtual desktops, what options you have available for each platform, and then go from there. For those Mac users, maybe you never thought of that. You might have been aware of the control with the arrow keys. And hopefully the mission control helps you out in more easily switching between specific desktops or switching to specific desktops instead of just aimless trying to look for the one that you needed. All right? Until the next video, fellow skeptics, take it easy, peace out, and I'll check you on the other side.